Hello, everybody. My name's Henry. I was part of the experiments, and one afternoon in 1974, I was called in on a project. They wanted me to do a little bit of night walking, so they was going to send me basically as pretty much like invisible. I was put in a chair, and they was going to send me back to 1943, to be exact, October 28th, 1943. I found out later, right before they sent me, that I was going to be going back to the Philadelphia experiments. They had lost some of the records on that, and they wanted an eyewitness account. Maybe I could pick up some info and bring back. So they proceeded to let me lay down and go to sleep. While I was asleep, I was walked to the chair. I strapped myself in, put the helmet on. They started the process and the countdown. Anyway, they shot me to Philadelphia. The project was just about ready to start when I showed up there. So I found me a good vantage point and proceeded to watch. Now, contrary to what's been told around, Duncan wasn't there, nor was Al Bielek. That was falsified. So just so we can get that clear and out of the way, the USS Eldridge was there. They was doing the test. And when they threw the switches on to the power, the Eldridge did sit there. It shimmered a little bit, kind of vibrated. There was lots of noises going on with the machinery and everything. But the funny thing was, it looked like the water had left from around the ship. Like the ship was still on the water, but yet it looked like it was floating because the water had left around the ship. And that was one of the things that I don't think a lot of people even talked about or people even knew. But from my vantage point, I could see that the ship basically was there, but it looked like it should have been sitting on the water, but the water had left the ship from around it. Then there was like a fog that come in out of nowhere that surrounded the ship. There was what looked like lightning strikes, but yet there wasn't no lightning. It was just like flashes of light. There was green, yellow, and blue, what looked like the lightning strike, but there wasn't no lightning itself. It was like the flares off of it. And the ship, like I said, it was shimmering. It went out of view slightly, come back into full view. Then it went back out of view, back into view. Then it sat there for a little bit, kind of like a ghost. You could see through it. And at that particular time, everything was going fairly good. They really wasn't trying to make the ship move from one place to the other. It was basically a test to make it invisible. But something went wrong. And basically what they did was they opened up a force field around the Eldridge. In turn, that also opened up a portal around the Eldridge. And the ship vanished one time, again, come back into full view, vanished again, come back with very just kind of like an outline of everything. It really wasn't the full ship. It was more or less just an outline, kind of like a drawing that wasn't in full details. There was nothing going on with the men. Everything was okay on that end. The ship finally did disappear. And along with the ship, the colored light, what looked like lightning flares, went with it. So did in the fog. It got real quiet. As soon as the ship disappeared, the water seemed to reappear where the ship was, but there was still an outline in the water of where the ship had been. At that time, they really wasn't sure. They thought they had really made the ship invisible. But the ship wasn't invisible. It was gone. Nobody knows to this day why there was still in the water the outline of the hull. But then, a matter of seconds, the water returned to normal. Flat, still, kind of like glass. Then the ship went from there, it went into hyperspace. Now let's stop for just 1 second. If anybody knows anything about metal, steel, you melt the metal, then you pour it into forms or sheets. That metal becomes cut and then bent. Then they weld those pieces together to make a ship. Now that's one thing I wanted to make clear before we go any further. That they don't just grab a piece of metal and start bending it. It has to go through a smelting process. They add different metals to it. And that changes some of the molecules in it. It gives it the strength it needs. If there's a weak part to the ship, you get out there and you get into a storm, a little bit of twisting and bending and slamming and banging, that ship will come apart. So, they make these ships a lot of times to withstand all these different storms and things. So anyway, the ship disappeared. It went into hyperspace. And with everything, all the monitors and everything was fine. The ship showed up in Virginia at the shipyard there, the docks. It come into partial view, blinked out, come back into partial view, then it come into full view. But this time when it come into full view, the green fog was around it, and the flashes of light. Everything seemed to be perfect. The monitors and everything was working. Everything was go. So, the ship sat there for a few minutes. But again, when it showed up there, the water had seemed to vanish out from under it. There wasn't a big splash. It was like somebody set the ship down gently on top of the water, not in the water. It flashed a few more times, in and out. Then all of a sudden everything shut down, and there was still a force field around it, still making noises. You could still hear it. So then the ship disappeared. And again, where the ship was in Virginia, where it set in there was an impression left on the water. Like the ship was still sitting there, but you couldn't see it. So the guys there that was watching was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Is the ship invisible? There's still an outline there. The only problem is you couldn't see the ship. The ship had left. A few seconds later, the water seemed to fill up around where the hull was. It went back to normal, flat as glass. Now, somewhere between it disappearing from Virginia, going into hyperspace, something went wrong. And that something was that they had too much power, too much current going. And that was the mistake they made. They never did shut those down. They was afraid to. Now, let me explain how these portals work. And that's basically what it was. It was they opened a portal and the ship disappeared in it. Now, how a portal works is it works like having two magnets and you put a steel ball between it. One magnet will push the ball away to the other magnet will catch and hold it. Flip that magnet with the ball over, it'll push the ball away, flip the other magnet, and it pulls it to it. That's what I call a push and a pull. Now, some of these portals, that's how they work. Other portals, you don't have to have the receiver on the other end. But in this case with the Eldridge, there was a push and a pull. The same generators and things that was on the ship would also be powered from both sides. Now, there was curvy waves and there was flat waves. That was needed to open these portals. But like I said, there was way too much power and things started going drastically wrong. Basically, the power they were generating actually caused the ship to get hot. Then it cooled off, it got hot again. But on the way back, the ship and the men couldn't take it. Now, previously, they had sent men places. They had sent objects places. The goal for this was, in case the ship was in battle and a submarine showed up, then the ship itself could make its own self with the sailors disappear. But of course, as we know, things went wrong. And the ship didn't just disappear and go invisible. It actually traveled through space and time through a portal. Now, again, Cameron Duncan, that's bogus bullcrap. Al Bielek, that's basically bullcrap too. Neither one of them two was on the ship. Neither one of the two jumped off the ship and wound up in 1983 at Montauk. That's the pack of lies told by Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron. Later on, Preston Nichols. But that was a fanciful story, and we'll talk about that right now before I go any further. The reason they let them claim that they was on the ship and in the Montauk experiments was they wasn't inside of the experiment. They were brought in toward the end to figure out what was going wrong. The part that they claimed about, Al Bielek claimed that he had to start smashing these machines and these crystals and shut the power down because there was too much power. That happened, but it was on the docks at Philadelphia. It was not on the ship. That was a big lie. It was a cover story. And the cover story was for Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron. The reason being is because they like to mess with kids. Both of them. And later on, Preston Nichols was another pervert they brought in. A sick pervert at that. They had to have a cover story. The United States is made up of lies and cover stories to cover their tracks so nobody gets in trouble. That's how these elites get by with doing whatever they're doing. They make up a cover story and it gets swept under the carpet, and American people, they buy it. So to keep Al Bielek and his brother out of trouble, a supposed brother, which that's a fanciful lie too, they were not brothers. To get him out of trouble, they let this guy tell the story, and they started telling around. Next thing you know, the story's legend. No, it was to cover their tracks so they wouldn't go to prison, or worse, be unalived for what they was doing. And you know how the scientists are, the government scientists, they like to play around with things, and you have to entertain them. So they would bring them little boys and little girls to entertain them in order to use their brains. Albert Einstein told them that you cannot do it with the way you got it set up. There needs to be more testing. They wanted to get it out there, so they turned to Tesla. Tesla told them, no, we need to run more trials. Let's use some animals in a machine and send them and see what happens. You know, you've sent men and you've sent objects, but you've not sent men with objects. It's gonna, you know, bad things can happen. So they went on with the project. Okay. On the way back, they started realizing there was too much power going on. So they thought, with the amount of power that was coming through there, that the ship would hit the water and bounce. This is the truth. So they turned it down. Well, that caused the ship to basically the molecules to pull apart, almost like liquefy. Well, what happened? Take pudding and try to stand on it. You sink into it. And moving as fast as they was moving through that portal, when they touched the wall because they were bouncing around, their arms went into the wall. The guys on the inside were shaking, and they put their hands, and their hands went through the wall. Some of their legs went through the wall. They was fused to the ship. And when it finally appeared, it solid up real hard, real fast. It's like taking water, put it in a cup, then put a straw in it. Now stick it in your deep freeze. What happens? The straw freezes inside of that ice, water that turned to ice. Well, now do it just the opposite with the ship. The ship's molecules somewhat liquefied. There was nowhere for the guys to stand and reach. You know, it'd be like reaching into thin air. So when the ship reappeared, there was a quick, like, drying process, so to speak. The molecules come back together. Like when you smelt something down, it's a solid piece. But then you run it through a smelter and it turns liquid. You pour it into a mold, you let it dry, and it hardens back up into steel. So anyway, that's kind of the gist of it. Anyway, when the ship showed up, the guys were screaming and hollering because they were fused and they was hurting. A lot of them lost their mind. A lot of them were sick. And again, they needed a cover story, so they used the Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron thing. And I'll explain that here in a little bit too. So, some of the guys that were salvageable got put into insane asylums where they'd never be seen again, someplace far, far away. The others died shortly afterwards. Some were actually put down, unalived. So they eventually redone the ship a little bit, and eventually they did sell it. And it was only used a few years then that ship was turned pretty much into razor blades and parts. Now keep this in mind. Some of those machines that they used at Montauk in later years, after the Philadelphia, and some of the parts and machines from the Philadelphia was used at Montauk. Well, some of those machines, some of the computer software and computers, Preston Nichols ended up with at his house. And there were some other things he ended up with that he really shouldn't have had, but they figured maybe, he wasn't totally crazy. They could get at least something out of him in later years. So anyway, they scrapped the project. Okay. Scrapping the project don't mean taking it and throwing it in a trash can and say, I ain't going to work with it. The military don't work like that, nor does these scientists. They don't care who they hurt or who they kill. So, they took it and splintered it. All the different forces, their scientists, got chunks of it. Here, see what you can do with this. Here, see what you can do with this. So, it was all splintered off different places. Well, a lot of them turned into other projects, like MK Ultra, the Phoenix Project, which I was involved with, Pegasus, Rainbows, and there was numerous other projects. But anyway, they were splintered off. So, I went back, give my report, and that was basically, when they broke it down, that was the information that they needed. They was trying to figure out, because they had missing pieces of the project, they didn't have all of it, because they wanted to try to experiment with it again. So, if you go to Virginia now, there's one slip where they park the boats, the ships. There's one slip, if you take I think it's called the Hampton Roads boat tour, they take you down and show you Battleship Row, and they'll point out the place that it took place. It's a slip that's always open. There's never ever nothing there. There is a reason for that. The reason is there's still things that happens there. There's like a remnants. And there's things that goes on there at nighttime, and that's the reason why they don't park no ships. But they do kind of tell you, here's where the infamous experiment, where the ship showed up and then left. Well, anyway, now back to Al Bielek and this Duncan Cameron. They were both sexual deviants, but Duncan Cameron had special abilities. And one of his abilities was that he could take anybody. He didn't care who it was. He always thought he was smarter than everybody else. He was arrogant. Now, in the videos that you see on YouTube, you see him sitting there quiet with dark glasses on. That's not how Duncan Cameron really acted. He was an arrogant piece of crap. Thought he was smarter than everybody else. One of the games he used to like to play in the projects where I was at, they would bring him in and put him in a cell. And when somebody would come to get him to take him to this here room to use him, he would play mind games with them. Literally mind games. He could get them to do anything just by him sitting there looking at them. And it was quite an ordeal because they wanted him to work on projects and he was too busy we'll just say messing with people to be a better term. I mean, he could get people to do things that they normally wouldn't do. And wouldn't be doing nothing except sitting there watching them, getting them to stare at his eyes. Kind of like the old vampire movies. Basically, he could put them under his spell. And he would have them doing all kinds of crazy shit. So, Al Bielek's game was, they were both smart. But Al Bielek's game was, he was the talker of the three. He was the talker. He done most of the talking for the other two. Because he was smart. All three of them were. But in their own ways. He was more of the negotiator, the narrator. On videos you'll see. Now, there's one video you'll see with him talking. And he openly admits in these projects that maybe you should give these kids incentives, like some money, something. And they might have been more willing participants. Let me set the record straight. Al Bielek was a piece of monkey crap. The reason being, you show me one kid that would go into these projects with the abuse you got, the torture you got, and most times you got killed in these projects. Who in their right mind would say, oh wow, he gave me $0.25. I want to do the project. That's bullcrap. That's total lies. That was Al Bielek being a politician. Well, look, I was a nice one about everybody else because I was at least wanting them to give them something, but they didn't want to give them nothing. What was you doing there anyway? That's the real question. You had brains, but you had one flaw. You was a sexual predator. That's why you was there. You got free kids to mess with as much as you wanted, and they got to pick your brains. So you had to work so many hours a day, and then after that, you could go play with your little kids. Torture them, kill them, and other things, which I won't mention here on YouTube, but you can draw your own picture. And like I said, there's too many truths out there that's been swept under the carpet, and all these lies being spread around, and all these videos, you can go watch them. They're pieces of trash. Literally trash. You know, we got pedophiles in prison. How come there's certain ones that are smart that the government can use, that they let them go and they violate and kill kids? I don't think that's very smart. I didn't vote for that. I don't know about anybody else. So, you know, I don't see how they can let them. It makes me sick when I see them on a video, even though they were from quite a long time ago. It makes me sick. The military, the shadow government, they ought to be ashamed of themselves, but they ain't. Us people, they didn't care about. We were supposed to do a lot of things we didn't want to do. And I done a lot of things that I may never speak of, because I was forced into it. But anyway, sorry about my rant. It just makes me a little upset. But they finally figured out what went wrong, and now they're able to send vehicles with people in them, ships with people in them, even airplanes, helicopters, you name it. The only bad thing is when they done that, they opened up portals everywhere. And some of those portals can never be shut. They're always there. There's one down there near Louisville, Kentucky. When it opens, how you can tell when you're driving on the interstate, your radio will start going fuzzy in and out. In that area, most times all you get on that interstate in certain places is nothing but gospel. I ain't much on gospel, but it keeps you from falling asleep. So you'll hear your radio will get real fuzzy. A fog will roll in first, and you'll get a radio that's fuzzy, and you'll start noticing static electricity in the air. Your hair will start standing up. The fog is so thick, it's like pea soup. You can't hardly see through it. You can only see a few feet in front of your car. Then you won't even know you drove into it. You'll have no clue. And then you just say you want to pull over to a gas station or something, and you see a sign, so you take the exit, only to find out that, as in my case, you could not have got from where you was at to this gas station or a truck stop. So after you figure it out, you get back on the interstate. Then you realize you've lost 4 hours of time. Then you drive further down the interstate, and it's getting toward morning, so you pull over to sleep because you can't see no more because of the fog and you're tired. You lose another 4 hours. So it's just one of those things that anybody out there that might come across this video, when this happens to you and you're afraid to tell anybody that you may think that we may think you're crazy, no, I've experienced it. And I'm just telling you, you're not crazy. I've experienced that myself down by Louisville. So, anyway, in these projects, we was working with time travel, opening portals, shutting portals, sending things through portals. I always traveled back in time. I never went forward. It was just one of those things I just never did. But like I said, they still talk about it. The Navy don't talk about it. But when you go on the naval tour, they show you the spot where they claim that the ship appeared. But what I'd like to know is, what other project that I don't know about that was broken off from this? I know all the projects I was in were splinters off of that, the Eldridge, and they're still using these today. They're still trying to figure out, take little pieces and figure out things, and these projects are still going on. They just went further underground. Now, I don't know about this Carl that was one of the first ones to talk about it. Now, was he a plant? Maybe they figured it was going to get out, so they let him slip out a little bit of stuff. I don't know. I don't know nothing about that. Never got really involved in that aspect of it. But, like I said, the reason why they used me for that, go back to that project to see it, is because I could be teleported back and nobody would ever see me. Now, I'll explain that. Like here, sometimes I'll lay down and go to sleep, and if I got something on my mind, like working on the chicken house or working on a mower, and I never miss a time if I put my tools back up where they belong and making sure I lock the chicken doors so the coons don't get them. Now, I have video cameras all the way around my house, and there's times when I must be doing it when I'm asleep, and the tools will be out there the next morning and the mower's apart. So then I'm like, I gotta see something in order to put it back together. Otherwise, I'm gonna have extra parts and extra bolts, and that ain't right. So I'd lay back down and go to sleep. And I'd be thinking about where this goes, getting information on how to put it back together through my brain, picking up on frequencies. Wake up, it's in my head, I've got it. I go out there, put it back together, shut the chicken doors, So for me to do that, the other was a breeze. 'Cause I didn't have to fix nothing. All I had to do was watch and learn. When I come back, they pick my brains. So it's almost like, what do they call it? It's almost like astral travel. But I can either be full physical where you can see me, or I can be totally invisible. Now, when I'm doing this around the house at nighttime out in the yard, performing tasks or walking the boundary lines, property lines, I never show up on camera. There's no dirt on my feet. But obviously I've been out there because I didn't put the tools back. I didn't lock the chicken pen. So, I can do it either way. I've appeared to my grandpa when I was about 30 miles away from him, and I was going to run away from home, and in the process of running at nighttime, I kept wanting to talk to Grandpa, and that was the wrong direction for me to be going, so I stopped, laid down, relaxed. It was a nighttime, and I night walked into his bedroom. Kind of scared the hell out of him, but I did it, and I talked to my grandpa, and when I woke back up, I was back out there where I'd started at, and I knew everything I did. My grandpa got up, because I told him where I was headed. He drove exactly to where I was going to end up at and was sitting there waiting. So, some people don't even know about this night walking. It's not sleepwalking. Sleepwalking is when you're asleep and you get up and you walk around. You may get in the refrigerator. You may go to the bathroom. But night walking is a total different thing. It was something that was not trained to me. I was born like that. I was basically a human milkshake. I don't know what all they put in that thing. All I know was I got a lot of abilities. That was one of the reasons why they took me into the project. And yes, I was sent as a little child to the Casey Foundation, Edward Casey Foundation, to be tested. And there was things that they had no name for it. Some of the abilities I had. And later on, I heard the name that they given to it, so I just stuck with that name, which is Nightwalker. I also have the ability to move things, and every so often I get a wisecracker that says something about, well, let's see you perform. Well, I'm not a trick monkey. You ain't got enough peanuts. I've tried to leave all this behind, and I've been doing pretty good. I stay to myself. I'm pretty much a hermit, and I stay away from people pretty much, other than when I have to associate with them. I don't do nothing to them. I treat them good. But I don't want to be harassed. I don't want people looking for me. I just want to tell my story. Things that happened to me. Because if I die tonight, all that information is gone. And nobody's ever going to know. And I just want you to know, there's probably more people like me out there. I don't know. They pretty much kept me to myself, except for once in a great while I'd get to mingle with a few people. Not very many, but a few. Otherwise, it's mainly scientists and doctors. People like that. So, just all I can say is watch your kids. Don't do like my parents did. They sold me into these projects. But then again, that's how my mom and dad got me. I was a milkshake, created in a lab. As soon as I hatched, my mom and dad was already promised. They took and dropped me off there with the promise that if I started showing any kind of signs of gifts, I guess as you'd call them, then they could rent me or lease me. My mom and dad got paid big money. I never seen no money out of it. I suffered a lot. And if there's anybody out there that's a troll that's going to make fun of me or laugh or dog me, I wouldn't. This ain't a funny matter. This is what happened to me. So, I just want all this stuff out there. I'm still being watched today. I'm still being followed. I got to be careful about emails I send or anything like that because they get hacked. I got to be careful when I answer the phone. A lot of times, unless I know who it is, I don't answer my own phone. I don't leave my property unless my wife's there. We carry radios. I go outside, I got a radio on me in case my wife's in the house. We got video cameras up. There was a time when I was packing gun outside. And I settled back down to just radios. So in case I'm out there and I don't see somebody sneaking up, my wife can holler at me. If I get into a jam, somebody tries to grab me, I can have her turn the dog loose and then come out there. I don't get to live as free as everybody else, but I try to live as normal life as I can because I've been a lab rat all my life. It ain't a fun trip. I didn't have a good life till I come here. Now I got somebody that watches over my back, takes care of me. Somebody that I really care about. So, I'm trying to live and experience things that all you people have experienced all your life. I ain't had all my life. Mine's always been in a cage. Or doing a job for them. An experiment. Taking risks. At any time something could have went wrong. I'd have been splattered or left in hyperspace someplace. So, I kind of think that I earned the right to enjoy what little bit of life I got left. However long or however short that may be, I've had people take pop shots at me here. When they do, I grab a gun and take a pop shot back. I've had people late at night during storms and cold weather. It can be hailing and snowing, sleeting. These people go over here to the field and sit there and watch me. Like, I get tired of people watching me, and I know I got a chip in me, and they know where I'm at. I can't even go to a doctor or a dentist. I got to be careful when I go there. They'll try to grab me there. Or incapacitate me, one of the two. It's not fun being me. But I ain't out there hurting nobody. I don't want to hurt nobody. But at the same token, somebody tries to do harm to me, well, I got the right to defend myself. I got the right to protect what's mine. I've done more good than I ever did harm. And I'm a part of these experiments. These experiments are a part of me. I can't help that. I can't help what they did to me. I had no control on that. I had no control what they made me do. Some of the things they was doing. I didn't want to be in those projects. I didn't get a choice. My mom and dad should have their ass kicked, but that's neither here nor there. It ain't going to solve nothing now. It ain't going to change what happened. So all I can do is try to explain to the people that wants to listen, and the people that don't want to listen, well, they wouldn't be worth talking to anyway. But for those that want to listen to my story about what happened to me and maybe get some sort of an idea, I think it'll be a good eye-opener. And I will continue to tell my stories about what happened to me in different projects, different things, as I go along. May not be all in this video, but videos to come, you'll find out more and more what it's like to be Henry. It's not fun. I don't like looking over my shoulder all the time, but that's the way I gotta survive. I used to move all the time. I'd travel and live one place for a while, get watched and followed, and people taking pictures. I'd pack up in the middle of the night and move. No warnings. Show up several states away. But I finally found somebody I can trust. Somebody that's got my back. And trust me, me and her, I told her about it. Explained to her about the way my life is. And she's seen it on several occasions on what my life's like. But she still didn't kick me to the curb. She was actually the first person in my life that ever really cared about me. Hell, my own parents didn't care about me. All they cared about was the money they was going to make off of me. And the sad thing is, I still cared. Of course, I was young and stupid. I finally got older and wiser. I pretty much severed ties. I don't associate with my family. My family is my wife, my dog, and cats and animals. That's my life. That's my little circle. It may not be much to nobody else, but it is to me. It's my whole world. Because outside of that circle is nothing but trouble. Trouble and pain. I think I've suffered enough over the years. I have a right to have a good life. Decent life, at least decent as I can have. I don't want nothing from nobody. Other than just get my experiences out there, and so this don't ever happen to nobody else. And just to show you how dark the government really is, and things that goes on in the shadows that you may not always know about, but they happen. So it's one of those things that I was involved with a lot of things, done a lot of things, and a lot of projects. And I finally got my life back. It comes with a cost. I still have spinal pains, feel like spinal compression. And to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, I don't know if any of you people know what milk in your mouth is. It's when they take your finger like this, and they bend it, and they take this finger and push it up toward this knuckle here. It hurts. That's the way my back feels sometimes when there's electrical storms. Sometimes can't even hardly get around. But I still push myself to get up every day, rain or shine, because my animals depend on me. So I do the best I can. I don't complain about the pain. I just walk it off. Some days I really just don't feel like doing nothing. I hurt. That was from that chair, from electricity they put into me. Their whole thing was they wanted to take my abilities and supercharge them. And they did. But it come with a cost. My eyes changed colors. And that's why I wear these glasses. I used to wear contacts to cover that up. It wasn't as noticeable. But you get dust and stuff, and any of you people that wear contacts, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's not something that's very comfortable. But I had to do what I had to do in order to be able to go to school or even go out in public. Because people are funny. They may tell you, oh, we wouldn't care about that. Yeah, some of them may say that, but others, it'd be like a circus. I don't want to be in no damn circus. I've been in a circus most of my life being a lab rat. I just want to live like everybody else. Try to enjoy the things that all you people got to enjoy. I don't even get to sleep like you people. I got about 7 REMs of sleep. I only get to go in the first 2. Anything after that, they said the frequency constantly. Just like they do at Walmart when they play that music that you may or may not even notice. They play it and it does something to you and it makes you want to buy more. Well, these frequencies, if I go into a deep sleep like the rest of you do, those frequencies, I start hearing them. I'm a transmitter and a receiver. If I go into that deep sleep, I'll do anything they tell me to. I have no control. That's what they count on. They counted on either me getting in trouble or two, me falling into a deep sleep. I can't allow that. When I die, I want to die here in my home. I don't want to die in some lab or be shot out there to hyperspace, left out there as a human popsicle. Ain't no way to go. So I have to make adjustments. I can't sleep like everybody else does. Every time I walk out my door, I'm taking a risk. Somebody popping a cap in me. They either want me back or they want me deceased. I got news for them. They ain't getting neither if I can help it. I just want to live. That's all. And I want to get my story out there to everybody so you understand. I don't want people lined up out here looking through the windows like I'm some kind of a crazy cockroach or something. I'm not. I got feelings just like everybody else does. I just want to tell my story. And I know telling my story brings in some trolls. We'll deal with the trolls. Real quick, real swift. We'll just oust them out of there. You leave a dirty message, you're done. You'll be removed. You'll be blocked. If you want to learn, I'm here to tell you. And if I ever explain something and it don't make sense, I didn't explain it good enough maybe, tell me. I'll break it down in layman terms. You got no problem with doing that. But there is certain things that only my wife knows that I would like to keep personal. It happened to me. There's enough information in me that you'll have all kinds of information. That's going to take me a long time to get all this stuff out from start to finish. And you'll be getting a lot of information that you've never heard about. And that's just the way it is. I wanted to start this channel, so I had to say so when I wanted to say something. Not count on somebody else whenever they wanted to go on. So that's why I started my channel. I ain't doing it for money. I ain't doing it for fame because I don't want to be found. But this is kind of like this channel is kind of like a therapy. It helps to talk about it. I've had all this bottled up. I've told my wife. But it's nice to be able to explain it to people. Get all this information out of me that I used to tell myself it was useless information. Well, it was. Until I finally, me and my wife figured out how to get the word out there. Whether it be on our channel or Ethan's channel. But I like having my own channel. I got more control. I can do a show every night if I want to. I can do 2 or 3. Just according to how I feel. So, anybody listening, not trying to be mean. I'm just stating facts. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next one.